we've got a great group of guys here to present some good information for you. So Jim gives you his best, and keep him in your thoughts and prayers as he gets healthy again, and hopefully we'll hear from him soon. But I'm going to turn it over to Tom Waslowski, who is our Vice President of Product Design for our metalwood category, and also well aware of what's going on with all of our iron franchise. As you might have known, we had a major introduction to our new line of irons. Today actually was the first day we announced them, and I'm going to let Tom, or T.O., talk a little bit about the iron, kind of the design of it. I don't want to make this too selly or anything, but it's really some pretty cool technology that we feel you guys need to know about. So without any further ado, welcome Tom, T.O.
Thank you. Greg and I go way back. I've known Greg when he was a tour player, so it's been fun to work with him along the way. And as you know, his dad was a club designer as well, so we had a lot of good chats over the years. But it's always fun to be out here with your group and talk about product. One of the things that we talk about, and I won't give you the iron right away, but when we talk about equipment, what our job to do is really make product exciting and make it hot. And when we know it gets hot, that's when it benefits the golfer, and it benefits the entire business of golf on the equipment side. So one of the things we're trying to do is really reinvent these products. They've been around for a long time in a number of different ways. And if you look at what we did a couple years ago with the R11, that was really the reinvention and the creation of a very hot driver because of one thing that was really important beyond the technical number of was it was white. And when people thought about that and said, well, what is that? That's kind of weird. It's just color, and there's some things going on with the alignment. But in reality, it created excitement in the business. And golfers are like, what is that thing? What's it do? And let me try it. Let me see what happens, and how can it help my game? And for us, and I was mentioning to Mike earlier, normally we'd sell about 150,000 drivers in the year at $399, and that year of the R11 we sold 350,000. Now, when you talk to the engineers and designers, we know that it was better than the previous drivers, but it was really the white that made it go a huge jump from that number. So hot products. And drivers have advanced over the years. Drivers are probably 30 years longer than they were 30 years ago. And so when you see that kind of performance benefits, everybody gets that boost. Fairwoods was a big deal this year. Obviously, with Rocket Balls being launched, we felt that was, again, a reinvention of that product and how it performs. We knew that Fairwoods had been good performers for a long time, but golfers weren't really jumping to replace their Fairwoods. With Rocket Balls and some of the other product that was launched in the market this year, there was excitement because we had changed something in the industry to make the category hot. And when you make a category hot, everybody gets excited about it. Golfers buy, they play better, and they're more interested in playing the game of golf. We know that's a big part of what we have to do along with the PGA is get people excited about playing golf and having fun with it. So we've done that with drivers. We've done that with fairways and rescues. And those products have gotten longer and longer, quite a bit more substantially in the last few years. And all of you guys can tell golf balls over the years have gotten a lot longer. So that's another category that's really done very well. And irons. Irons with some of our irons, some of the competitive irons have gotten a lot longer. The one place that iron hasn't changed is the better player's iron. And that club still goes about as far as it did 30 years ago. It still has about the same size as it did 30 years ago. It still has about the same kind of forgiveness it did 30 years ago. And therefore, it plays about the same. And in many cases, that product isn't really hot because it's just the same thing over and over again. So when we looked at that category as well as the mass market players' irons, we said, how can we reinvent what we've learned from metalwoods into the irons? And so what some of you may have seen today was the conversation about our Rocket Blaze irons was really the incorporation of the speed pocket into irons. And one of the things that's very exciting about this category is it's, in the players' iron particularly, very ripe for reinvention. And one of the things that we know we talk about with a lot of players, especially the amateurs, distance is critical. The better player, distance isn't always critical. We're looking at a lot of things that are more important than distance, like consistency, accuracy, forgiveness, workability, and in many cases, the look itself. So when you look at the product we had this year with Rocket Balls irons, fairly large, worked great, but when you put it down in front of a player, he said, you know, I don't know if I could play that, it's just too big looking. So it was really a repackaging of the speed that we learned how to make and the technology from the metal woods into the iron. So what you're going to see, and we'll pass this piece around. I don't have a full iron, I just have a half an iron, just for the fun of it. No, seriously, I do have a full one later. The half an iron really gives the cutaway of the section. It shows that speed pocket, which is a cutaway into the sole of the club, which allows the sole to flex. And if some of you remember from racquetball's fairway woods, typically everybody puts their weight on the bottom. And when you put all your weight on the bottom, it makes it stiff. When it's stiff, it doesn't flex at all. So what we tried to do was loosen up the structure itself to have it flex. So what you're going to see in this iron is great performance from a standpoint of it gives you the performance where the better player needs it. And these slots are in the long irons, is from 7 up to 3 iron. They're really, if you talk to a good player, they say, well, I don't need my pitching wedge, my 8 iron, my 9 iron. Usually they're fine. I don't need you to do anything weird with them. Just make them so they're the right gaps and they go through the ground properly. But when you take the longer irons, I don't know any player out there who's saying basically, hey, I could probably hit my 3 or my 4 or whatever iron you carry out there as your longest irons. I could probably afford to hit that a little bit farther, a little bit easier, a little bit more consistently. So by redesigning this structure so that it's more flexible, we actually get a lot more speed, and we get a lot more speed down low on the blade. Now, where do most good players miss their iron shots? They miss it low on the blade. You miss it thin, right? Thin to win. So the challenge here was, how can we make the speed faster on the bottom, make the speed more consistent across the face, and overall give the better player what he really wants. He wants more consistency on his shots, he wants more repeatability of the distance, and he wants a little help on his miss hits. He doesn't really want this iron to go that much further. He also wants it to come down a little steeper. So the whole mechanism of this sole design with the speed pocket really works where it gets the ball up quicker, comes down steeper. You're going to get a little benefit to a comparable iron that we make in this style. You're going to get maybe 3 to 4 yards on your standard center hits, but you're going to get a lot better performance on your miss hits. So a few numbers for you. If we looked at the area that is within 1% of the ball speed of the perfect hit, on a typical iron we make now, an MC iron, that area is a number like 50 square millimeters. To give you an idea of what that is, that's the top of a tee head, right? About that big. Okay, this iron will have an area that's within 1% of that perfect hit, that's 250 square millimeters, about that big, which is actually 5 times bigger than a comparable iron. So the whole idea here is give the better player much more consistency of miss hits, give him a shot that gets up easier and comes down steeper, and he's going to hold more greens. That's why we are so excited about this category this year. We believe that in the iron for the better player, these products will reinvent, just like we did with racquetballs this year and R11 last year. So that's why you see a lot of excitement around us for this product. We had the product out for our tour players a few months ago, and what they did was we actually showed them a few versions. We showed them the standard head. We showed them a rocket blaze iron where it's actually got the full speed dosage, and then we showed them one where it's slowed down in the center with inverted cone, and you have this wider sweet spot. And to a player, they hit them much more consistently. In fact, one of the guys was commenting, because we have our tour shoot on a golf course, and there'll be one player on this hole, another player on this hole, another player over here. And one of the players was hitting a hole, I think it was Sean O'Hare, hitting him over a tree to a target, and one of their guys was over on the next tee, and he said, you know, I could have put a blanket over the balls you were hitting with that iron because they were so consistent, and that's what the better player is looking for. So I'm going to pass this around. We can certainly ask questions about it, but that's half of the iron head. The other exciting thing about the product is there's also the market set, and the market set for that average player is designed to do a lot of the same things with that speed pocket. It's also designed to be a lot more forgiving and easier to hit, and it's quite a bit shallower in terms of the blade height. So when you see the rocket blades, the standard iron, they're going to be much better than the current RBZ versions and a lot easier to hit. And I'll take this opportunity to actually show you the blades. And we'll have a little bit of hitting. Do we want to do the hitting now or want to do the hitting? We'll do the hitting a little bit later. Okay, so when you look at the tour version versus the standard version, you can see obviously a little bit of more of a notch feeling, but a much shallower blade than a traditional racquetball's blade, a much more conventional shape profile. Remember, these aren't hollow like the racquetball's irons are. So in terms of performance, they're going to look better, feel better, get up easier, and go farther. This club will go about 8 to 10 yards further in the long irons than the current racquetball does. Okay, so we're able to re-engineer that speed pocket so the ball gets up easier, goes a lot faster, and this iron is actually up to the USGA 822 CR on it. The tour iron is also very close. It's about 820. So in terms of the two performances, you're going to have great new excitement around irons this year. And I'm going to pass them around together so that they're you can compare and contrast. But let's open it up a little bit to any questions you guys have on the irons. They're all cast, okay? What we believe in terms of the product, particularly in irons, you can make a much better product just like a metal wood. All metal woods are cast, except for the faces, which are actually usually forged and machined. So when you take a shape like we have, where it's got undercuts and deep pockets, you can't make that easily with a forging. And usually the forged alloys you have to use are not as strong as cast alloys. And what we do in this design is we use two different alloys. We use a stronger alloy for the market head, because it is larger and has a bigger face, than we do for the tour iron. But they're both much stronger than the traditional alloys. Okay, one more thing I'll show you guys, and this is really where the speed and the inverted cone comes in. And I'll actually have to do a little drawing here, so if we can't have everybody see it, I'll move it around. But basically what we talk about is COR is going to be over here, and I'll have to draw this with a couple lines just to get the idea. So let's talk about 790, maybe 800, 810, 820. Remember, the USGA number, and you guys talked to Frank Thomas earlier, 822 is the real number. Some people think it's 830, but it's really 822. So if you look at most conventional irons, like our typical MC or MB type irons, and this is going to be your center, and let's call this heel and toe. So I'm going to draw the ball speed plot for your mishits. And basically with a conventional kind of MB iron, they're kind of like this. MC iron maybe is a little bit like that. So that's the conventional loss you're going to get at these low speeds. When you make a high COR iron like a rocket ball is this year, what you get is you get something like this. So you get a very pronounced difference in speed throughout the range of mishits. This is why when a lot of players, good players, hit those kind of clubs, they'll make comments about hot spots and inconsistent distance. Because these irons are usually bigger, you usually don't tell as well what your mishit was. So when you hit a shot that now goes 20 yards over the green, you're like, what the heck was that? Because you have a very narrow range across the face, heel to toe or up down, of where that speed actually works. And if you hit it over here, it might not feel quite as bad because the head has a lot of inertia. The speed drop-off is much more severe. And if you really mishit it, you still don't feel it's quite as bad because of that inertia, but it's over here. And that's where you get this wide discrepancy, and you get the conversation about hot spots, flyers, clubs that aren't controllable. This is really a high COR, and I'll call this, like a Rocket Ball 1 for now. When we talk about the new Rocket Blades iron, what we're trying to do is we're trying to make an iron like this. I'm going to use a different color here just so we don't get our lines too messy. So basically what you're going to see is a product that is like this. So this is the new Rocket Blade. So we have the consistency you get on mishits of the speed. We have very high inertia, and we don't have a lot of hot spots. In fact, we have hardly noticeable hot spots because we've reduced this zone and the range of the zone you get from the very high-speed irons. So that's where you think about the engineering of the iron, why it's going to be so much more consistent than a traditional hot-faced iron, and it's going to be a lot longer. So what you do with that from a design standpoint is you look at the iron and say, what do we want to do with that speed? Now, we can give that player the speed like we have in the Rocket Blades, and we can give them the longest club we can possibly make. But for the better player, we're going to give them a club that's more consistent, still has the speed, but in many cases, we're going to give them the higher shot that comes down steeper. So it's going to carry farther, come down steeper, and all in all, that's where you see the tour iron being used, is designing it for a little bit higher flight, but not higher spinning flight, and more consistency on misses. Does that make sense to you guys? So that's when we talk about the excitement and the revolution of really how these irons perform. because now they're going to be much more consistent. They're going to get up in the air easier, and we'll have a little demonstration a little bit later on in the presentation comparing the current iron and the two new ones. I sense a question. I just don't know where it's coming from. There we go.
So are these replacing the MC blades now?
Yeah, the Rocket Blades Tour will replace the MC.
MC. So the Rocket Balls is still a current line?
The Rocket Balls, as we sell now, will continue at a lower price, as we historically have done, and the Rocket Blades will come in as a new product starting in December this year.
So Tom, no more Forge?
We'll still carry the MB in the line, but those set sales are so small.
Okay.
You know, we average about 1,000 sets a year. Every year since I've been sort of on this side of the business, the last 12 years, it's 1,000 sets a year for us as an MB. So we'll still have it. We actually think it'll be interesting because we have a lot of our tour guys in MBs now, but we think based on the performance, a lot of them will be switching to the new Rocket Blades Tour. And we already have, you guys, some of you are on the webs already looking. Sean O'Hare's already been playing them. He was adamant after our tour shoot in September about getting these irons and getting them as fast as possible. So we actually took the badges and did fake badges on them, and he's been playing them for about a month. And so all of our tour players are very excited about this because for them, when you think about the shot consistency, as you get them closer to the hole, they're going to make more money. It's just the simple statistics we get from ShotLink and the PGA Tour. And we look at Sean's stats last year, and just by switching to this iron, we estimate, not doing anything different, he's going to make $500,000 more than he did last year, just on proximity to the hole. So we know that's a very noticeable factor for the better player, and something that all better players want. They don't want a club that goes 10 or 15 yards further. They want their gaps to be manageable. The nice thing is with this setup is we think we'll be able to manage the gap better to where woods have moved beyond in terms of distance production. These irons, especially the market set, will catch up that gap a little bit. So all in all, we think it's a very exciting year for the marketplace in terms of irons, and led by this improvement in technology.
Tom, do you see the 2 or 3 iron replacing the hybrid with this technology?
You know, it's interesting, John. That's always a challenging question, whether that hybrid replaces a fairway wood, an iron. There's playability differences between those clubs, but these clubs will fly more like a hybrid.
Right.
So we do expect them to cannibalize a little bit, or maybe to have players go back and carrying that 4 iron or 3 iron in their bag. When you talk to the tour guys, which is a very small set, Sergio, for instance, says, hey, I don't like to hit a hybrid because I don't like the shots I get, and if I'm on a tight hole, I want that blade to align with. So this will bring back a little bit of hybrid ball flight in a blade style iron. But, you know, like anything in this industry, John, it's almost impossible to predict, you know, which way it's going to go. What we've tried to do at Taylormade is make every club in every category as good as we can make it and sort of see what happens. All right. No more questions about the irons. We've got a little bit more detail to come later, and we'll do some hitting. The standard Rocket Blades will be out this fall. And available in December, especially great for Southern California with our season. And the tour versions will be out in the spring with the typical spring ones. But we will have guys on tour playing them, or Sean already. As soon as we get them sets, they're going to go and play. All right.
Great. Thank you, Tom. All right, just backtracking a little bit, let's introduce our principals here today. But first I want to comment, this is our 6th year, I believe, with Taylormade sponsoring this summit, and this has become far and away our premier event, certainly from a teaching standpoint and maybe even from an education standpoint. So, you know, I can't thank Mark King and all the people that work with him enough, and let's just acknowledge, you know, if you would, Taylormade as a sponsor that makes this possible for us to spend 2 days here at a very reasonable price of bettering ourselves through education. So let's give it up for Taylormade. And that being said, Greg Cesario behind me here is the staff manager for U.S. Sports Marketing for Taylormade. So as such, he is our contact person and the person that we work with to set this thing up. You know, a lot of you know Greg. He's been in this section working for 17 years. 17 years. Before that, he played for 18 years, was a good player, but like he just told me, like a number of us out there, he went broke playing, so I had to get a real job and went to work for Titleist and then came to Taylormade. Before his current position, he actually ran the Kingdom. So a lot of technical expertise there, and I'll let him introduce the rest of his staff as far as going forward. And again, the theme of this is kind of blending, the art and the science of instruction. So we've got some significant data, as we talked about this morning, from Taylormade, and then we have Mike Malaska, who was gracious enough to, when Jim took ill, to fly out on short notice and be with us today. Those of you that were here 2 years ago saw Mike working with Jim, and obviously a great presenter and a great teacher, also a great player. So history in playing, he's been with Nicholas Flick Golf Schools, Golf Digest, ESPN Golf Schools. He's now the head of Nicholas Golf Academies. He's a top 50 instructor, and certainly, and Greg will maybe go into it with a little bit more depth, but I can't thank Mike enough for coming out under these circumstances to be with us today, and I'm sure you're going to very much enjoy his presentation. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Greg, and we'll go from there. Mike, thank you.
Now the panel we have here has some pretty extensive background, so I'm going to have to read some of their bios to you, but I just want you to have a better understanding and feel of what our backgrounds are and kind of our specialty and what allows us to be up here presenting to you. I mean, the goal of today obviously is to present the teaching aspect of golf. We're also here to present the technology aspect and also the fitting aspect. As you know, all three of those have to blend perfectly together to better the player, to help players play better golf for the most part. And hopefully you'll get a nice perspective of all three of those today, that you can make sense about what's going on, kind of dispel some myths out there, and also talk about a lot of facts and how to make yourself better instructors and better golf professionals. I want to first introduce Tom Fisher, who we call Fish, obviously, so feel free to call him Fish. I think he'll be fine with that. But I'll read a little bit of the bio on Tom. He was born in England. He graduated from Buckinghamshire University with a sports science degree. He completed his PGA membership at the Belfry. He represented Taylormade at the National Custom Fitting Center at the Belfry, where he was first introduced to the mat system in 2003. He moved to San Diego, and in 2005 to manage and grow all the Taylormade performance labs in the country and globally, I think. In his last 9 years, he's performed over 4,000 fittings and has worked with all skill levels, from tour players to higher handicaps. His current role is a global business development manager for our Taylormade Performance Division. This consists of managing all the current labs and opening new sites and continuing to innovate the fitting experience with research and new technologies and methods of fitting. So Tom is going to present a nice session on what our motion analysis technology has allowed us to do, and Mike Malaska will, all of us will add to that presentation and hopefully give you a little background on that. As you were listening to T.O. a little bit earlier, T.O. was born in Youngstown, Ohio. He received his Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland. In 1990, Tom entered the club business with Titleist. I actually worked with him for a number of years over at Titleist, and he remained there until 1996. He then moved over to Taylormade, and he's held various positions there, including research engineer, tour engineer, and director of metalwood R&D, director of the ROSA, and currently he's senior director of product creation for metalwood. So let's hear a hand. Mike Malaska, I was asking him what his nickname is, and he said I couldn't repeat it, so we'll have to just call him Stud or something like that. You know, Mike's passion for sports scopes his entire life. Before the rest of the instruction world started to take note, Mike's reputation of excellence based itself on the commitment and understanding of all the physical aspects of the body and the golf swing. Mike's knowledge of the golf swing, as well as his philosophy in incorporating fitness and nutrition, has made him a leader in teaching since 1976. This combination became Jack Nicklaus's personal regimen, and in 1991 he began his career with the Nicholas Flick Golf Schools. During 2003, he was a lead instructor with Taylormade, ESPN, and Jim Flick Golf Schools. Presently, Mike has taken golf to another level with his teaching programs and lessons under the Malaska golf title, which was started in 1995. Today, Mike's works with beginners and juniors, women, golfers of all levels, and tour players, and serves as our corporate consultant at Taylormade Adidas Golf. To graduate Weber State University, Mike was a college All-American and was voted into the school's Hall of Fame in 1999. Mike is currently listed as top 24 golf instructor in the nation, and most recently received the highest award a PGA professional could receive as an instructor, and was voted 2011 National Teacher of the Year. So congratulations, Mike. Thank you for being on board. And myself, as Bill mentioned, I grew up, I'm a Southern California boy. I grew up in Redlands, California. Pretty much grew up in the golf industry with my father, Mario Cesario, who's been in the club design and club making business for over 55 years. It was great growing up kind of with the golf club in my hand. I went to Redlands High School and graduated and went to Arizona State on a golf scholarship and played 4 years out there with Billy Mayfair. Phil Mickelson came in a year after I left, so I didn't have to play in his shadow too much. But after that, I decided to turn professional and chase my dream, and went after it for about 8 years and had a great time. Fortunate to get my tour card in '93 and played '94 on the Nike Tour and played overseas for about 3 years too. But just a great experience of chasing my dream and reaching it, touching it, smelling it a little bit. But unfortunately, I kind of got a little burnt out and felt like I gave it all I had and had to move on. So in '95, I decided to kind of take that crossroads in my career, and my dad told me, well, you've got two options, Greg. You could become a golf professional and grow the game and teach players and help players, or you can take your background from a technical standpoint with what you learned about golf club design and go add your credibility to the golf industry. And that was the decision I made in '95, and got a job with Titleist and worked in 3 different positions at Titleist primarily. I was a sales rep for the first 3 years in the Southern Cal section, and then I worked into a product management role where I was basically training and teaching the sales force about club design and product design and fitting. And then really the last 8 years at Titleist, I managed and started up their national staff program. I've been with Taylormade for 3.5 years. The first 1.5 years I was managing our fitting facility, the Kingdom, out in Carlsbad, and then I had the opportunity to move into staff positions and player development, and that's pretty much what I'm doing now, is overseeing our top advisory staff in the country. So it's been a great run, and hopefully we can show you a little bit today about all of our backgrounds. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up Fish to talk a little bit about our mat system and what it's done for us from a technology standpoint, from a player improvement standpoint. He's a great resource. We want to make this real interactive, so please ask questions. And Fish, all yours. Thank you.
Is this on? Thanks, Greg. Thanks. Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for taking time out of your day or 2 days to come and hear us talk, and hopefully you can gain a lot of some insight about what we've done as Taylormade as a company from the club, the TO, nicely put. But I'm also going to tell you about what we've done for technology in terms of the mat system. I don't know if any of you have been on the mat system or heard of the mat system. In fact, you actually have one where you can probably drive a 3-iron from here just over towards JW Marriott. The mat system stands for Motion Analysis Technology by Taylormade, and it actually kind of begun in 2001. We kind of joined partners with a company out in Atlanta, Georgia called MRI, Motion Rally Incorporated, and they decided to create a 3-dimensional system that would enable us to analyze golf swings so we could use it for fitting clubs, but also for R&D purposes. Their main source of income actually is they work with defense teams around the world actually and train their military how to, in warfare, how to react and how to train each other. So it's actually a pretty unique system, and we're very glad to partner with them in the sports side of the business. So as I said, it began in 2001, and the first system was at the Kingdom in Carlsbad, just over the hill there, and primarily it was just used for the tour players. We were using the tour players fitting, doing a little bit of instruction. A lot of the golf coaches came in, which I'll show you some insight of what they found really good about the mat system. They're in the leaflet, so follow along with me in a bit or two. But they used it obviously to learn a lot more than what the normal video can show you. Nice thing about the mat system, it helps to quantify our data. So rather than us just saying, yeah, it looks inside, or yeah, it doesn't look like he's tilting, or he looks like he's turning more, the mat system enabled us to actually quantify that, and so we can really see improvement and areas of development as well. And then we commercialized it. We wanted to bring that experience to the masses, so the Taylormade Performance Labs were born, and now there's 22 sites around the US and about another 18 globally. So very, very popular, and very, very good from a club fitting standpoint, but also from a tuitional standpoint, which I'll kind of get into at the moment. So what we use it then for primarily, as I said, is club fitting. So it shows abundance of data. As you'll see on one of the handouts, that's just a kind of a little snapshot of what the mat system can show us. But from a club fitting standpoint, it shows us some of the key attributes such as path, face angle, angle of attack, centimeters of strike, ball speed. We can tie in launch monitors into that, so that can draw into it. We also show lie angle. We can look at shaft deflection, swing speed, swing time, ball speed, you name it. The mat system will show us what exactly each golfer is doing. So Greg will go more into it, how we can optimize golfers through their golf clubs. R&D have used it a lot as well. What it's enabled us to do is actually see how golfers really swing the golf club, really understand what their DNA is, so we can really help us design golf clubs. The R7 draw was really one of the first products we kind of played around from the mat system, understanding how much we really did need that club face to close. As of late, it actually helped with the rocket blades, understanding exactly the area where people really did hit the golf club. You'll actually found out that most golfers or high handicap golfers hit about 3 millimeters below the center of the face and about 4 millimeters out toward the toe. Good players hit it more a little heel biased. So if you hit it in the heel, I guess you're a good player. But, and then we've also used it of late. As you've seen, our recent drivers have had a lot to do with adjustability, and adjustability to do with loft. And the mat system enabled us to show that a lot of people are playing the wrong loft. As Tia may have put, or has probably put in presentations before, the reason why people are playing the wrong loft now is because a lot of things have changed. You know, in the head, center of gravity has changed, and what the golf ball we're using has changed, and also even shafts have changed. So, to a certain degree, in terms of able with different weights and different kick points. So, therefore, the loft, the generic loft of, yeah, I hit the ball high, or I know I need to keep the ball down, I need an 8 degree of loft, is not necessarily the case anymore. So, the mat system is able us to identify that. And then from a tuitional standpoint, as I said, a lot of our customers, or the guys that came in for fitting, bought their instructors. And that's actually been very, very beneficial around the country in the Taylormade Performance Labs, because it enabled them the instructor to see maybe things that they haven't seen on general cameras, to really help that golfer grow and understand what their limitations are and how they can actually develop their game further. So it's been very key from an instructional standpoint. So I've just kind of printed off a few screenshots, and these are kind of the few key things that some of the instructors as they come along have kind of noticed now, and the kind of stuff, and also kind of want to show off what kind of the mat system, how little things, certain things, excuse me, on the mat system can show you that not necessarily a normal conventional camera can show you. So
I'm going to jump in.
oh, bloody hell, already.
Here's the deal. How many of you use cameras when you teach? Okay, so most everybody, right? I ruined a career or handicapped it dramatically on a camera angle, because I had somebody take a picture of my swing. I'd never seen it before, my swing. He compared me to 3 other players' swings, and he started drawing lines in, and he showed me where my swing was off relative to theirs. I spent the next 5 years trying to get my swing in that position, and I did it. However, I got my swing there, but I couldn't find the golf course. They kept telling me, that's fine, swing's better, your timing's off. Here was the reality. I ran into who took the pictures of the players that they compared me to. First question he asked me, where was the camera when they took the picture of your swing? I said, well, he was standing here. He says, well, then your swing looked a little like this, didn't it? And I said, yeah. He says, well, it wasn't broken. Why'd you fix it? Okay, so camera angles. I'm not going to get into a discussion of what's right and what's wrong, but what I find interesting in our industry, there's nothing relative to camera angles. Some guys put it on the target line, some put it on the hand line, some on the body, some don't care. Well, I can promise you that 2D, just regular cameras, where you put it has a big, big impact on what you think you see or don't see.